Yo, Steelers Nation, drop everything right now because what I'm about to reveal could completely reshape the future of Pittsburgh football for the next 10 years. I'm not exaggerating. This isn't some clickbait nonsense or wild speculation from anonymous sources. This is real, this is happening, and the Steelers are standing at a crossroads that could determine whether we're celebrating championships or watching from the couch come playoff time. Before we dive into everything, smash that subscribe button immediately. We're covering Steelers news around the clock, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming next. Trust me on this one. All right, let me paint the full picture here because understanding the context makes everything that follows hit so much harder. The Pittsburgh Steelers wrapped up the 2025 season in the most frustrating way imaginable. Another playoff appearance, another early exit, another winter where we're left asking ourselves what went wrong and what needs to change. And look, this isn't unfamiliar territory for the black and gold faithful. We've experienced this disappointment before. We've watched seasons full of promise evaporate when the stakes were highest. But there's something fundamentally different about this particular moment in franchise history. When Mike McCarthy arrived in Pittsburgh, the excitement was palpable throughout the fan base. Here was a proven winner, a Super Bowl champion from his Green Bay days, a coach who understood what it took to build a program capable of hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. The energy was electric. Fans were genuinely optimistic that this fresh voice and new offensive system would unlock something special, but that first playoff run ended in heartbreak, one and done, the kind of exit that leaves a bitter taste and forces everyone involved to take a long, hard look in the mirror, and that's exactly what's happening right now behind closed doors. At the Steelers facility, the front office is making decisions, big decisions, franchise-altering decisions, and based on the reports emerging from multiple sources, we're about to witness an offseason unlike anything we've seen in years. So buckle up because I'm breaking down every single piece of this puzzle. Let's start with the roster move that's been quietly generating buzz among insiders. The Steelers are reportedly considering parting ways with a veteran tight end who simply didn't deliver on expectations. Now, I'm not here to pile on anyone personally. This is a business, and sometimes things just don't work out the way everyone hoped. The organization brought in this player expecting production. They envisioned a reliable target who could exploit the middle of the field, create mismatches against linebackers, and provide another dimension to the passing attack. Unfortunately, those expectations never materialized on the field. Meanwhile, you've got Pat Freiermuth continuing to establish himself as a legitimate weapon. The guy has been grinding, improving, and proving his worth week after week. He's earned the trust of the coaching staff and the quarterback room. Then there's Darnell Washington, the physical specimen who keeps flashing that ridiculous athletic potential. Between those two players, Pittsburgh has a solid foundation at the tight end position moving forward. So when you look at a veteran who underperformed occupying precious cap space, the math becomes pretty straightforward. We're talking approximately $7 million in cap savings if this move happens. Yes, there's a dead money hit somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million, but that's simply the cost of conducting business in the National Football League. What matters is that freed up capital gives Omar Khan and his team additional ammunition to improve this roster in meaningful ways. This isn't a glamorous move. Nobody's creating highlight reels about releasing a tight end, but it's precisely the kind of calculated, emotionless decision-making that separates contenders from pretenders. Sentimentality has no place in roster construction at this level. Now here's where things get absolutely wild, and this is the development that has Steelers Twitter losing their collective minds. Multiple reports suggest Pittsburgh is exploring trade scenarios that could land them one of the most explosive young receivers in the entire league. We're talking about a player with game-breaking speed, exceptional route-running ability, and the kind of raw talent that makes defensive coordinators lose sleep at night. Brian Thomas Jr. has emerged as a potential target, and if the Steelers pull this off, it fundamentally transforms what this offense is capable of achieving. Let me give you the full background here. Thomas burst onto the scene as a rookie with electrifying performances that had everyone buzzing about his future. The kid has legitimate burners. That first step off the line of scrimmage is devastating. He can threaten defenses vertically in ways that stretch the field and open up opportunities for everyone else. He makes contested catches look routine. And perhaps most importantly, he's still developing. We're witnessing a player who hasn't even begun to tap into his ultimate ceiling. Now, fair point, his second season saw a statistical dip. The numbers weren't quite as eye-popping as that initial campaign, but here's the thing that casual observers miss entirely. Sophomore slumps happen constantly in this league, especially for receivers learning the intricacies of professional coverage schemes. Defenses adjust. They game plan specifically to neutralize emerging threats. The great ones adapt and come back even stronger. One down year doesn't erase the talent that made him special in the first place. And here's the financial angle that makes this even more intriguing. Thomas remains on his rookie contract. That means you're getting premium production at a cost-controlled price point for the next several years. In a league where elite receivers command astronomical salaries, acquiring young talent before they hit the open market represents tremendous value. The Steelers would be adding a legitimate number 2 option who could eventually develop into a true alpha alongside DK Metcalf. Speaking of Metcalf, imagine what this offense looks like with two genuine threats capable of winning one-on-one matchups on the outside. Right now, opposing defenses can bracket Metcalf with safety help and dare the Steelers to beat them elsewhere. Add Brian Thomas Jr. to the equation, and suddenly, coordinators face impossible choices. Double Metcalf and watch Thomas torch single coverage for big gains, shift attention toward Thomas, and unleash Metcalf's physicality against overwhelmed corners. That's the kind of offensive firepower that wins in January when the stakes are highest. The Steelers possess the draft capital necessary to make an aggressive trade like this happen. They're not operating with empty pockets. They have picks, they have assets, and based on everything we're hearing, they have the willingness to swing for the fences when the right opportunity presents itself. If Jacksonville or whichever team currently holds Thomas decides to rebuild and move on, Pittsburgh needs to be first in line making calls. But wait, there's another layer to this offensive overhaul that deserves serious attention: the trenches, the unglamorous battleground where football games are actually won and lost. Reports indicate the Steelers have identified David Edwards as a potential free agent target to stabilize their offensive line situation. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's not exactly a headline-grabbing signing, but hear me out because this move makes tremendous sense when you understand the context. Pittsburgh's offensive line has been a source of frustration and inconsistency for years now. Injuries have plagued the unit. Continuity has been nearly impossible to establish. And when you examine the current roster situation, there's legitimate uncertainty about who will be protecting the quarterback come September. Isaac Sumalo might be walking in free agency. Durability concerns linger throughout the group. The Steelers desperately need reliable bodies who can show up week after week and execute their assignments against the monsters prowling the AFC North. David Edwards provides exactly that kind of steady presence. The man has been a consistent starter in Buffalo, holding his own against quality competition without missing significant time. He's not going to generate Pro Bowl buzz or national media attention, but he's going to show up on Sunday, do his job competently, and give the offense a fighting chance. Sometimes the smartest signings aren't the flashiest ones. Sometimes you need the dependable veteran who brings professionalism and reliability to a position group that desperately needs stability. And here's the beautiful part about Pittsburgh's financial situation. They're working with nearly $45 million in cap space. That's serious flexibility in a league where teams constantly struggle to make numbers work. The Steelers aren't strapped for cash. They can compete aggressively for quality free agents. They can make multiple moves without painting themselves into a corner. Signing Edwards doesn't prevent them from pursuing other upgrades elsewhere on the roster. All right, take a breath because we're about to shift into the conversation that matters most. The conversation that could define this franchise for the next decade, the quarterback position. And what's emerging from draft circles has absolutely captivated Steelers Nation in ways I haven't seen in years. ESPN recently released a mock draft that has Pittsburgh selecting Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, with their first-round pick. Let that sink in for a moment. The Steelers, a franchise that has famously avoided investing premium draft capital at quarterback, might finally be ready to commit to developing their own signal caller from scratch. This isn't some mid-round flyer. This isn't another stopgap solution. This is potentially selecting the future face of the franchise. So who exactly is Ty Simpson, and why should you care? The kid started at Alabama this past season. We're not talking about some small school prospect flying under the radar. We're talking about the most pressure-packed program in college football. The place where quarterbacks are expected to perform at championship levels immediately or face relentless criticism from one of the most demanding fan bases in sports. And Simpson delivered in that environment. 28 touchdowns against just 5 interceptions before some late-season struggles, over 3,500 passing yards, a 64% completion rate as a first-year starter navigating the brutal SEC gauntlet. Those numbers demand attention. That's legitimate production against NFL-caliber competition week after week. Scouts have been raving about his accuracy, his improvisational ability when the pocket collapses, and his arm strength to attack defenses downfield. Now, let's address the concerns because pretending they don't exist would be dishonest. Simpson's decision-making wobbled down the stretch. 4 interceptions in the final few games. His completion percentage dipped when facing the toughest opponents. Those are legitimate flags that evaluators will weigh heavily, but context matters enormously here. He was a first-year starter with a compressed preparation timeline facing defenses loaded with future NFL players. Growing pains are expected. The real question is whether he possesses the intelligence and work ethic to learn from those mistakes and emerge stronger. Here's the detail that grabbed my attention more than anything else. Reports indicate Pittsburgh sent scouts to watch Simpson multiple times throughout the season. Multiple times, that's not casual curiosity. That's deliberate, focused evaluation of a potential franchise quarterback. The Steelers are doing their homework. They're gathering information. They're seriously considering this investment. Think about what this means in the broader context of everything we've discussed. Picture the scenario where all these moves come together simultaneously. The Steelers release the underperforming tight end and reclaim $7 million in cap space. They swing a trade for Brian Thomas Jr. and add an explosive playmaker opposite DK Metcalf. They sign David Edwards to anchor the offensive line with veteran stability, and then they select Ty Simpson to be the quarterback who leads this franchise into its next era. That's not simply running back the same formula and hoping for different results. That's not a full-scale rebuild where you tear everything down and suffer through losing seasons. That's something far more sophisticated. That's competing aggressively right now while simultaneously laying the foundation for sustained success. That's having your cake and eating it too. If Aaron Rodgers decides to return for another campaign in Pittsburgh, you've surrounded him with legitimate weapons and protection. Simpson sits behind a first-ballot Hall of Famer, absorbing knowledge, developing his skills, learning how the game operates at the highest level without the pressure of immediate starting responsibilities. That's the ideal developmental path for any young quarterback. No baptism by fire, time to grow. A legendary mentor demonstrating excellence daily. And if Rodgers doesn't return or things fall apart for whatever reason, Simpson steps into a situation designed for success. He's not being thrown to the wolves behind a terrible offensive line with no receivers capable of creating separation. He's inheriting a roster constructed to help him thrive. He's got playmakers who can win their individual battles. He's got protection that keeps him upright. He's got a genuine opportunity to succeed rather than merely survive. This is the caliber of organizational thinking that separates championship franchises from perpetual mediocrity. It's not just about winning this particular season. It's about building something sustainable that doesn't collapse the moment one player retires or suffers injury. The Steelers are attempting to balance urgent competitiveness with long-term vision. And honestly, I respect the ambition even while acknowledging the inherent risks. Because here's where the tension lives for passionate fans like us. Walking this tightrope between competing now and building for tomorrow carries real danger. You might end up executing neither approach particularly well. Resources get divided, focus becomes scattered, and before you realize what's happening, you're trapped in perpetual mediocrity. Not talented enough to win championships, not bad enough to secure the premium draft picks that accelerate rebuilding timelines. That's the nightmare scenario the Steelers must avoid. The fan base remains genuinely split on the correct path forward. Some supporters are exhausted by short-term thinking. They want Pittsburgh to finally commit fully to developing a franchise quarterback and building something that lasts 15 years rather than chasing another veteran rental who might squeeze out one decent season. Others see a roster with legitimate talent right now. They see a defense capable of competing with anyone. They see opportunity knocking and want to answer aggressively before the window closes permanently. Both perspectives carry merit. Both perspectives reflect genuine love for this franchise and desire to see it succeed. And that fundamental disagreement is precisely what makes this offseason so fascinating to witness. The decisions being made over the next few months will reverberate through the organization for years. They'll define the Mike McCarthy era from its earliest chapters. They'll determine whether we're celebrating in February or making excuses in January. What I'll say is this: the Steelers' front office clearly has a coherent vision guiding these moves. These aren't random decisions thrown against the wall hoping something sticks. There's strategy here. Trim salary where production doesn't justify cost. Add youth and explosiveness at skill positions. Stabilize the trenches with proven veterans. Potentially draft the quarterback who carries this franchise into its next chapter. That's layered, sophisticated thinking. That's chess while others play checkers. After years of watching Pittsburgh make decisions that felt reactive rather than proactive, it's genuinely refreshing to see an approach that considers multiple timelines simultaneously. Of course, plans mean nothing without execution. Mock drafts are entertaining debates, but real evaluation happens when games are played. Does Brian Thomas Jr. recapture his rookie magic wearing black and gold? Does David Edwards hold up against the ferocious pass rushers lurking in the AFC North? Does Ty Simpson develop into the franchise savior everyone desperately hopes he can become? Those questions remain unanswered until we watch the actual games unfold. But right now, in this moment, I feel genuine optimism about where the Steelers are headed. There's vision here, there's intentionality, there's willingness to think both short-term and long-term in ways this organization hasn't demonstrated in quite some time. The first playoff run under McCarthy ended in disappointment. But the response to disappointment reveals true character. And based on everything emerging from these off-season reports, the response looks exactly right. Calculated aggression, smart roster management, an eye toward building something capable of competing for championships year after year. This is a pivotal moment for Pittsburgh Steelers football. How they balance urgency with patience over the coming months sets the tone for everything that follows. As fans, that's simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. We've been burned before. We've watched hope transform into heartbreak too many times to count. But something about this offseason feels different, more purposeful, more deliberate, more promising. Maybe that's just blind faith talking. Maybe I'm reading too much into reports and projections that might never materialize. But isn't that what being a fan means? Believing this time will be different, believing the moves being made will finally prove correct, believing the Steelers can return to where they belong, competing for championships, and hoisting that trophy once again. So, Steelers Nation, I need to hear from you. Are you on board with this dual approach of competing now while preparing for tomorrow? Do you like surrounding Rodgers with weapons while also drafting a developmental quarterback like Simpson? Or do you think Pittsburgh needs to fully commit to one direction and stop trying to have everything both ways? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This community makes covering Steelers news genuinely rewarding, and your perspectives help shape these conversations. Let's debate this together. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Thank you for watching and being part of this incredible community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. We're pushing hard to grow this channel, and every single subscriber helps us reach more Steelers fans across the world. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. It helps the algorithm and gets this content in front of more people who bleed black and gold. This offseason is going to be absolutely wild. The decisions happening right now will ripple through the franchise for years to come, and I'll be here breaking it all down every single step of the way. Stay tuned, Steelers Nation. The future is being written as we speak. Let's see where this journey takes us.